Hello, one and all, and thank you for coming. Welcome to Inspire Me Forward. My name is Linda Watson. I'm your host and the founder of this beautiful and I'd say inspiring podcast. We always sit in virtual circle with with the Inspire Me Forward, and we offer a space for our guests to share their stories, and their stories are of life, of love, and just everything that could be possibly in between. And we realize that in sharing sharing like organically, like we do, that we create a community, and we make sure that there's a seat in that circle for everyone. And we believe that in sharing our stories, we create a bit of a collective connection. And just maybe that story one person shares is exactly what another person needs to hear at that time. So with that being said, let's welcome Joan Marie Gjos to episode 27, Surviving 911. And Joan Marie, I'm going to give you the floor just a bit, just to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Joan Marie Gjos. I live in Echo Bay, Ontario, on a farm with my daughter, Megan, my youngest of two. I have two beautiful, successful daughters. We share our farm with 9 horses, 3 dogs, 1 house cat, and 5 barn cats.
Wow. And you are, did you say Sault Sainte Marie?
Sault Sainte Marie, but I live in Echo Bay, so close to Sault Sainte Marie.
Excellent. And for those that are not in Canada, that is more north than at the top of the Great Lakes.
Yes.
Exactly. Well, welcome. I'm so glad to have you here, and so glad that you have, um, when I asked, you said yes to sharing your story. I think it's such an important story to share. And when we talked before, we talked about like from crisis to calm. And I've heard a couple stories recently or podcasts recently about surviving to thriving, and how are we moving from that one state into another. And I think it's myself coming from the disaster management field, yourself coming to emergency services field. It sort of feels like there's an invisible level of stress that we don't necessarily, we live in, and we maybe don't see. I know for myself, I didn't necessarily see it until I left it, and I wasn't as aware of it. So I think this is just and I think it happens, I will say this, I speak for, for collective, but I think this is happening more and more. And we are in these spaces of crisis when we're working, and be it whatever job we're in, and how can we move to those states of calm. So thank you for just taking that time tonight to share your story with us. And
Well, thank you so much for having me.
I was happy. And so we always start with one question. Everybody answers it, and it's not in the line of surviving 911, but it is the question of, can you share with us a time that you received an act of kindness, be it random or not, but can you share a time where you received an act of kindness?
I certainly can. It happened recently. My miniature poodle was injured and had to have emergency surgery. And we have a woman that comes out, Karen Dougal, from north of 9 Equine and Canine Body Works. And I contacted her because she does work on our horses, asking her to what I could do to help my dog. And well, she happened to be in town and came over because she had a cancellation, and did a random act of kindness of working on my canine. And she's doing way better as a result of it.
Oh, isn't that something? Right place,
Yeah,
right time, and right heart. Yeah.
exactly.
Oh, that's lovely. And I've heard of that North of Nine before. I think I've heard of her. Yeah.
Oh, she's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's what did I hear the other day? That it was a saying, I wrote it down, don't have it in my head here, but it was the idea of that our acts our acts of kindness have to outweigh our acts of non-kindness to make the world a better place.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah, it's just like, yeah, that's it. It sounds so simple. It's that our acts of
Yes.
kindness just have to be more and more and more.
Yes.
Yeah, even to ourselves. I heard that also a while, and I've heard it several times, is we need to talk to ourselves like we talk to our dogs. So every time we say, "Good girl, you're so beautiful," we have to say the same thing to ourselves.
Well, if anything, it'll make me laugh more.
Well, there you go. You're so cute. Yeah, let's jump in. Let's jump into
All right.
to your story, and I'd like to give you the floor and just share with us your 911 journey.
All right. Well, my emergency service journey started when I was 18, turning 19. I became a paramedic in Sault Sainte Marie. And from there, I was working part time. I took a full time position up in Timmins as an air medic and spent a 1 year contract there, returning back to land medic. And eventually, I was injured on the job and I became a communications officer in the ambulance, and we do fire. And so a total of 41 years in, and about 39 years in, I believe it was, during my time, I did struggle. I had times where, I just felt burnt out and helping people and everything. So I learned meditations and everything. And then I was in a car accident. And because of the tinnitus and the struggles I had from the car accident, I no longer could use all the stuff that I had learned. And so what I did was I had to go to get a therapist to help me through, and I was diagnosed with PTSD, which I continued to work going along with help. But then that's when I decided I needed to retire because I wasn't 100%, and I didn't feel I was the best partner for everybody. And I wasn't as strong a communications officer as I once was to support the paramedics in the field. So I took retirement as my option. And now I'm focusing more on my horses, and I do provide respite work for people because I love to help people. I just knew I needed out of the crisis line.
Absolutely.
That's the short side of
That's a
it.
short story. Can you maybe talk about the difference, or if there is, in stress between each of those, between ground paramedic to air to 911 operator?
Sure. So as starting out as a medic, it was terrifying because you study and you learn, but most of the stuff you have to learn as you go. And I found that I was going home and I was reading my textbooks over and over again so that to make sure I treated each patient properly. And it was the best learning tool was working with one of the senior medics because they knew what they were looking at.
Mm-hmm.
I was know what it was based on a textbook, but they knew just by looking. So I learned a lot by the senior medics. I always had an interest in trying new things. So when the air medic position came up, I took it. I didn't find it as much as they wanted you to have some higher level qualifications. They did train me at that point on the job training. I found the land more stressful in that as an air medic, you usually got them all packaged and ready to go because I worked on a jet, a fixed wing. And whereas the land medic, working in Northern Ontario, you're out there like hours away. Like I've seen calls last people a full shift, and the shift is 12 hours because of the distance they have to travel in by any mode of transportation, snowmobile, train, whatever it takes to get into them. So that was stressful. But I dealt with one situation at a time. When I moved into dispatch, I worked on several situations at a time. And where I used to describe it this way. As a paramedic, I went home physically exhausted. As a communications officer, I'd go home mentally exhausted because there was just so many calls to take and so many calls to do and crews to dispatch. And then towards the end of my career, I was the lead communications officer. So I had to oversee as well as back up the dispatcher or the call taker. So the stress level, and you're dealing with people who don't talk to you the very nicest.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be, and after COVID, it got even worse with how people spoke. The way I got through it was I used to say to people, well, it's not like they can go to, they go to McDonald's and the service wasn't great at that one. They can go to the other end of town to the other one. There's only one person that's going to answer a 911 call, and that's us.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it was very stressful.
I imagine. So you did
Yeah.
see a change during COVID.
Oh, huge change.
Really?
Huge
Wow.
change, yes.
So I trying to form a thought here into a question to come out with is, when I guess in the 911 operator, it's dealing with the mental, the psychological part of it, and the psychological first aid part of it, as well as the medical emergency.
Exactly. And we often say that. We often would say a loved one may be calling about, let's use their mother, for example. But not only is that mother a patient, the caller is as well, because that's a stressful event for the caller. So you have to treat them as if my favorite one is somebody calls you about a cut finger. Could be the same stress level as the person who called you about an amputated limb. You don't know what their stress level is when they're calling you. Each person has their own give and take what they can deal with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's about curbing your conversation to be with them and make them feel like you're listening to them.
Mm-hmm.
Because the thing is, that computer program we run our call taking on is very regimented. You have to ask the questions and based on the information provided, and you have to give the first aid based on the information provided by script. Well, the caller doesn't have that script. So you got to work with them. You got to make them feel like you care.
I gotcha. Yeah. Yeah, it's another whole set of skills.
It is.
So let's talk about you and how you dealt with the stress from the beginning, and as you move through, you said you were meditation and got skills like that, but how did it change and how did you deal with it?
So in the start, I was very young, so I would go out dancing with my friends. And then I used to do running. I was a runner. But then after my back injury, it became difficult. So my focus then was on rehab of that. As I got further into working as a communications officer, I ended up learning that I had a love for horses, which I developed as a form of exercise to take my children out and do something.
Mm-hmm.
And then I attended a 911 conference, and in there was a talk on how horses help in more of a therapeutic way. And I'm like, oh, I need to learn more about this. So I did. I found a program at Horse Spirit Connections in Southern Ontario. And I had the privilege of taking that course and learned that how horses mirror us. So now what I do is when I have something I need to work through and I'm not quite sure what it is, I go to the horses and I use them to help me see what it is I need to work on.
Mm-hmm.
And now I do have clients that I do that with, but for me, that's what I do. And then like I said, I have been doing meditation, but with that being problematic, it's actually a little easier when I'm doing it with the horses because I find my tinnitus isn't as bad because my stress level is down.
Mm-hmm.
But when my stress level is up, it's bad. So, but yeah, so I use my horses. That's my big thing.
Mm-hmm.
Whether I'm walking with them, working with them, riding them, it's my thing.
You mentioned when we spoke before that I think it was a mare that you had that she would really mirror, like when you, like she wouldn't maybe not talk to you, but she would mirror that. No, I'm not now. I get.
Yes. So that would be Twister. And a Twister, I wouldn't use with clients because it was like if somebody was crying or upset, she would be very aggressive. So once I started doing my therapy, my therapist says, well, you need to go and talk to your horse. I'm like, oh, you don't understand. She doesn't like this. Well, lo and behold, because I ended up how I survived so long in the field, in my EMS world, was I actually blocked out feelings.
Hmm.
I felt nothing. So when I realized that, that's when I reached for help. And now that I was starting to feel again, I went and spoke to my mare, and she's actually starting to come around.
Ah,
But you're right. She will say, yeah, that's not it right now. It needs to be, you need to work some of this out. So we'll go and I'll exercise her and everything. And then once I've let go of some of it and I'm ready to look at the feeling and acknowledge it, so is she.
mm-hmm. Yeah,
But it has to be a one-on-one. She doesn't want an audience.
that's fair. That's fair.
Yes.
You also spoke of, we'll come back to the horses, but you also spoke of I'll say a service that you would call on your way to a call sometimes.
Oh, the people I called for assistance. Is that what you're?
Well, you said something you'd be crying on the way to a call,
Yes.
and there was a company, there an organization that
Oh,
you could.
yes. So that was actually, I was driving into work and I was really struggling. And a lot of times I was driving into work and I'd be in tears going in and just not sure I was going to be able to make it. So the organization I called it's called Boots on the Ground. And I spoke to a retired police officer and she was amazing. And we talked and she gave me some tools. Like for her it was these beads that she uses to kind of get her through a tough go. And I in turn, I have a ring that I wear, and
Mm,
when I'm feeling stressed, if I need to, I can touch it to remind myself of how strong I actually am.
mm,
Through that conversation is when I made my decision that retirement was the way to go, because that's what she said. That's why she decided. And it alleviated a lot of stress for her. And at that point, I had only been toying with it. But she got me into work. She talked me through it.
mm.
She got my anxiety down and it was amazing. And so kudos to them because I felt great about my decision to retire because that's what others have done too. It was like I had, yeah, very great support network there.
Yeah, it's okay to leave it.
It is. It's
Yeah.
okay that life didn't turn out the way I had planned, and that I could make a change.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And there is life beyond.
It is, for sure.
There is a life beyond that work that
Yeah.
we're, because
Yes.
it's not necessarily the kind of work that you can't take home or you don't take home. You can't put it in a drawer. You can't type out an email and then put it in a drawer. Does it, and correct me if like it stays with you. The trauma of it stays with you.
It does. And the thing was, I did learn to put it on a shelf and put it away. But the damage that did was that I stopped feeling anything for anything. So that's really hard. That's tough. It's if you have a family to support you through it and to let you talk out some of your day, then you don't have to shelf it. But if you're on your own, sometimes you got to have those places like boots on the ground or any other supports that are out there, because you do need to unload it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So there's a lot of stuff out there being carried around.
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a friend of mine who has been down a very difficult road as a paramedic, and going through the PTSD, and we've been able to communicate with each other on the different things, and our stories are very different. But the thing is that knowing you have support helps you heal.
Mhm.
Knowing that you don't have to go back to it is a really, really hard one. It's really
Mm.
difficult decision to make, to hang up that career choice, because you have so much passion when you go into it, and to say goodbye is very, very difficult.
Why do you think it's interesting you say that? And I mean, I know just leaving disaster management field for me it took me a year to just to, I remember writing my letter of resignation exactly a year before. It took me that long to, so why do you think it's hard to leave?
It There's a lot of rewards to it, right?
Mm.
And you feel so proud of yourself for serving to help others, and to be able to work in a critical situation, and you work so hard to do well in your job and for people to look up to you. And it just has such a reward that is so hard to describe
Mm.
from a person, and I just think of this beautiful woman who I one of our things is, when we retire from this line of work, we have that last call,
Mm.
that call where somebody gets on the radio to say goodbye to you. And it's like that trophy that goes out and says, great job.
Yeah.
And then my beautiful friend, who I say, you've retired from being a paramedic, but she had to leave not the way she wanted to.
Mhm.
She had to leave that job that she had so much passion. She was awesome at it, with no trophy, no last
Mm.
call. And it's those individuals
Mm.
that my heart goes out to. It's those individuals that deserve that trophy, because they've done so well to hold their heads up and move on to their next chapter.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I've heard just some videos of those calls and they're amazing.
Yes,
I didn't know that they were, I'm gonna say a thing, but I didn't know that that was part of
it
leaving.
is.
It's
It
beautiful.
is. Yes.
Beautiful. Um, so let's just taking a breath and sort of going on to your healing journey through it all. And you've
Sure.
touched on it, but what were some of the signs? You said that you weren't you didn't feel like you were giving 100%, but what were some of the signs that you sort of maybe started to feel bubbling up, and then towards the end, like they were full on there, that maybe other folks can sort of, oh, well, I'm feeling some of that too.
Right. So I can remember as when I was a medic on the road, and I mean, you'd have to go call to call to call, right?
Mhm.
And you didn't have time to process the call you just finished, where I did CPR on an infant. I had to move on to the next one. So I learned back then how to put my calls on a shelf.
Mhm.
Now, some of them I could deal with by talking to individuals, but the old school of thought was, just suck it up. Just suck it up.
Yeah.
So over the years, as I went, I was like, wait a minute, I don't have to suck it up. Nobody needs to suck it up. There's got to be something out there. And like I said, I had my physical activity that helped me deal with some of it. And I had a really good group of friends back then that would listen to my stories that I could unload on, some in the medical field. And then during COVID, I discovered that COVID was my best friend because I didn't have to socialize. I didn't have to show anybody this side. Sitting behind a phone answering calls, I sounded professional. I sounded like I had it all together. And then things started opening up again. And my girlfriend came out with her grandchildren to see the horses.
Mhm.
And as she usually did, she reached around to give me a hug.
Uh-oh.
And I thought it was the weirdest thing because I was like, man, I don't feel anything. I feel like nothing at all. And I mean, I didn't say anything, but that's when I knew I really needed help. I had gotten to a point where this just wasn't right. And when I look back after going through some of my healing process,
Mhm.
I realized one of the things I would do would be to race my horse really fast through the field because it was an adrenaline thing. So I could
Oh,
feel
really?
something, but I didn't realize what I was doing until I seeked help. And the thing is, I had a very supportive work team. I wasn't the first one who reached out to get a therapist help, and I'm sure I won't be the last. And during that process of going through that, I now can sit. I wasn't sure what was first hitting me when I started, the feelings started coming
Mhm.
back,
Mm.
and I would sit in it and I would feel, where in my body do I feel that? What's going on? What does that mean? And I would analyze it and look at it and write it down. And when I fast forward, I was out last year riding my horse and I was like, oh my goodness, look at the colors. Have the leaves always been that color? There were shades of colors that just everything blended together before, whereas now I could see so many colors. It was the biggest thing. I told my therapist, I was like, I cannot believe how bright and brilliant these colors are now. And I had lost sight of so many things. I just had lost sight.
Do you think that's when you say that, for me, it goes to a slowing down. And you said before that you would race your mare across the fields of
Yes,
that adrenaline. Do you think that's just a sort of finally sort of slowing down and that noticing?
it is. It's slowing down. It's taking time to breathe. It's taking time to just feel the sensations of my body, um, and be able to put a name to a feeling and just enjoying the the life that I've been given. Like it wasn't where I thought I would be. I really didn't, but it is a beautiful one. Like
Mm.
I'm very fortunate.
did you have then, the word identity comes up for me. So when you left, did you find that you sort of had to get to know yourself again? And there was sort of now who am I now?
Yes, it's so true. When I could no longer work as a paramedic, that was the biggest identity crisis I had had.
Really?
I wanted that job so much and loved it, just was so passionate about it. Then I went into communications, and how I ended up in there, I used to sit with one of the communications officers, and she kind of taught me things. So I gained an interest in it.
Mm.
So I was able to get a short story, got the job in there. And my my thing was to always keep paramedics safe. I always checked on them. I knew how long it should take them to do whatever type of call they were on. And so I prided myself on making sure that I did the job well. And I just, when I was leaving that last day, and I was like crying as I went
Mm.
to my car, and I was like, I don't know if I'm crying because I'm sad or relieved. I'm not sure what this is all about. And now, months later, that was back in August. And months later, I'm like, yeah, it was time. And there was an opportunity to go back part time. And I was like, no, I'm finally getting me back and building a new me. I don't want to go and put things on a shelf anymore.
Mm.
I want to live life and see the colors.
Nice. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Interesting. So I think that leads us into maybe a conversation about sort of the bigger picture of wellness. And I've heard there when I left my job about a year and a half ago after 15 years in the field, and it was not 41 but 15. But it was still, there was just wellness was the thing. And there was, hiring wellness directors and bringing on these wellness or developing these wellness programs. And now now there's been the research done on wellness programs and within an organizations or within systems. But there seems to be a lot of misnomers about it. And I guess my sort of question is like, just what would have helped you? And you said that you sort of came from that suck it up.
Yes.
And what would have, I guess, what would have helped way back when? And then maybe we can go on to like what helps now? Like how like what I'm seeing in the research that I've been reading and looking at is that mental health and having that mental health support is there as opposed to, well, here's some yoga classes you can go to. Or here's some of
Yes.
this you can go to. Here's a spa day you can have. As opposed to, and research is showing that no, here's some resources, but here's some mental health support, and that's where they're seeing the change.
Yes.
So yeah, what might have helped back when, and sort of what do you see things maybe in that sector?
So back then, it would be hard for me we didn't know as much as we do now.
Mhm.
We know so much more now. We know having a conversation, taking a break. And I can honestly say my management team started implementing this. They pushed and pushed to get more individuals on the floor working so that if you take a bad call, the other ones could pick up the slack and you can step off the floor. There were courses starting to be happening, and gratitude to the employees. Like I just looked on Facebook before coming on here. And he was my assistant manager when I retired, but now is the acting manager. And he posted, because it's telecommunications week, he posted about how proud he was and that we have such great employees, and it was just so nice to see that.
Mhm.
And I don't think enough managers do those kind of things for their employees. I know this for a fact in the city that I live in. If a police officer or a firefighter are struggling, there's other jobs for them to go to.
Mhm.
They have a backup plan implemented to help those individuals. There's no backup plan for a paramedic.
Yeah.
If you can't handle it mentally health wise, well, we'll see what other kind of job. But here's the thing. If that's what happened to me when I injured my back, they said, well, here's the thing. You don't qualify for much. So, you can go work in the kitchen or the laundry, because we were hospital employees. My manager at the time said, that's not going to cut it for her. He stood up for me, got me a job in communications so I could stay in my line of work,
Yeah.
which helped my self-esteem maintain. Now, today, going forward, are the managers doing that? I've seen my manager do it, but are all managers doing that for their staff?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, or do they just say, well, bye, see ya, good luck? That's the biggest thing right there.
Yeah.
Because think about it. You've got all those junior ones coming up watching to see, do I want to stick around and still be a paramedic when I could go be a firefighter or a police officer? And if anything happens to me, they got my back.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, like, we work to help others. Our management teams should be there working to help us.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
And I found a big difference when I had a management team supporting me through things and saying, it's okay.
Yeah.
You need some time off. Let's get that working for you.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's in any organization now, it's to have that security that you
Yes.
can say that or have that recognized.
Yes.
I'm guessing in many organizations, there's a fear to even asking for it.
Well, that's the thing. That's why I'm saying, if
Yeah.
you support the one that's going through it,
Yeah.
then the ones up and coming aren't going to be afraid. And that's what I
Yeah.
saw in my department. It was like, when I came forward, it wasn't like I was the first one who came forward, and there was no disgrace in it. It was like, all right, look at her. She's good for you. You're getting support.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, like, so that helped me a lot. That was
Mhm.
like, hey, you know what? I still want to keep working. I can do this.
Mhm.
And they backed me up and supported me through it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
So it's
that's,
huge,
yeah, that's,
huge.
yeah, absolutely. That's beautiful to hear. So what would you had if you were speaking now to nurses and other paramedics and people in disaster relief and any in those fields or anybody, and we're feeling these feelings and maybe more so in the emergency services and nurses and things like that. What are some words of advice for them that they're starting to feel those stresses, those bits of stress like you started to feel, and putting their feelings on the shelf when they get home? Because I know those services right now are just so stressful.
Absolutely, they are. Well, here I'm going to put a little plug out there for me then.
Absolutely.
So I run a little business at the farm with horses. And if you can find a place to work with horses, like I have, that can help you learn, because by the time you start putting them on a shelf, you're not really sure what they are or how to deal with them. but the horse can reach in and feel the energy, mirror that emotion, and help you work through it to help you learn to feel it in your body once again. It's amazing to see. And anybody who wants that opportunity, I welcome it because I like to see their reactions to it.
Mm,
It's amazing. The
yeah.
other thing is, when you're going into these fields, start looking right away what supports are out there. Don't be afraid to do that. Look for the support.
Mhm.
When you're first starting out, start journaling about things. Write it down, dump it.
Mm,
Don't put it on a shelf and leave it there. Write it out. Yeah, you sign confidentiality, agreements with every employer, but there's no reason you can't write it out. You don't have to put names or anything. Just dump it in there and call it your dumping journal. And don't store it all away.
yeah. 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 That's that buildup that
Yes.
you're just
Yes.
gonna snap at some point.
Yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
Like, I honestly feel that if I had learned at a young age to do grounding exercises, to learn where feelings came up in my body, that because at one point in my life, my feelings were explosive when they came out because I would
Mm,
store shelf, 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 and then they would just blow up. The bookcase would come tumbling down.
yeah.
And now I take time and I breathe and I ground myself and I think about, where did this hurt me? Where did that bother me? And now I can have a conversation about it and not a blow up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Healthier for everybody.
it is.
Yeah. So if you could give us, I'm sorry, put you on the spot here. So if you could give us, do you have any like a breathing exercise? Like that just you could give us now or a journaling exercise? Is there anything that something on the spot? I hate to throw you on the spot, but it's just coming
Oh,
to me
you
here.
are throwing me on the spot. Um, Literally for my grounding, I just do the head to toe thing of feeling everything and letting it loose. But my favorite one is to feel where something is bothering me. I'll use my stomach, for example. And I take it and I blow it up like a balloon and pop it so that I can get rid of it. And it was one of those exercises when I did the horse training. It was like, here, just blow it up, blow it up, blow it up, let go and release. So it's actually one of the ones I do.
Nice, nice. Good one.
Yes.
Good one. Just pop it. And yes, that's what the horses. So let's go back to the horses. So what, like you talked a bit about them. They are so good at reading our energy. I will definitely put some links up later for folks that they can find people in their area, um, at least in Ontario. But yeah, tell us some stories of what the horses are. What are maybe no names named, but what have you
Oh,
seen them do, or for yourself or
so
others?
um one of my favorite exercises is path to your goal. So the client is asked to think of a goal they want to set for themselves. And then we name two obstacles. And so there's three objects for the horse to go with the client. One will be to walk around, one to walk through, and one to walk over. And it is always hilarious because I say it doesn't matter which comes first. If you're trying to do it in a certain order, it may be that the horse will decide for you which order. So they'll go and they'll be like, I'll ask the questions along the way. So, yeah, is that really an obstacle? Because what did you see there? Well, the horse walked right through it. I said, yeah. So, is it an obstacle to get to your goal, or are you just making it an obstacle? Like, let's talk about this. And then if they don't go through, then we have that conversation.
So
So at
just to
the end of
clarify, they're
it,
leading the horse through these.
nope, they are not. The horse
Okay.
is walking with no halter, no
Okay.
lead. And that will actually tell me a lot. It's not that I don't use halter and lead, because sometimes I have to. But if the person is able to get enough out of their head to connect up with the horse, it's amazing. It's very rare that it doesn't, but it has happened. And then at the end they'll be like, yeah, sure, you just made the horse do that. I'm like, really? Okay, watch this. And so I'll go in with no intention, nothing at all, and I'll make the horse do all the obstacles with me at my side. No halter, no lead. And they're like, the horse can really do stuff. I said, the horse does these things all the time, but your energy told the horse there was an issue. And now we're going to work on it.
Yeah.
And I just recently worked with a young client that is struggling through some things. And we always say this in a different way in my organization with the horses, but he looked at his mother and he said, "You can't make this up, Mom. That horse really knows." And I'm like, "Yes, that horse really knows." And his eyes lit up. He had the biggest smile. He looked at his mom and he said, "Are you crying?" And she was trying to wipe them away. But the thing was, there was such a relief in seeing her child smile and acknowledge the things that could work to make his classroom experience better.
Nice. Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
it's like a release for the parent too. And I think that is my biggest reward, is when I see the parent say, "Oh my gosh, my child wouldn't open up before this. And you got the child to open up." Like, no, it
I
was the
did.
horse. It was the horse,
I'm
not
just the
me.
translator. I'm
Yeah,
just the
I'm just the
translator.
translator. I just understand horse language.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's
Yes.
beautiful. That's beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there is. And I know you're doing near Ottawa, you're doing a workshop with somebody for first responders, which we
Yeah,
don't
with
see a lot of
Catherine.
those. So that's
Yeah,
we'll put a link to that up. That's
I'm so looking forward to it.
yeah.
It'll be great. Catherine's helping me design a workshop for women up in my area as well. So
Mhm.
I'm going to do the one with her so that I can get a good feel, and then I'm going to set one up for the Sioux.
Nice. Excellent.
Yeah.
Those from the
Yeah.
Sioux. It's coming.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, that's so important. I think that we need to look into any of those fields.
Well,
And
what I tell people when they look at how much it costs to come work with horses, and it's not covered, and I say to them, "So you ever go for a pedicure, manicure, facial? I don't think any of those benefits are covered. This is self-care. This is taking care of you.
yeah.
How much is it worth to you?"
Well, and this is to me, it goes back to that wellness thing and that research showing that there's manicure, pedicure, the spa day,
Yes,
yoga, stuff like that, which are great, but
absolutely.
now we're talking with the horses, we're talking mental health.
Yes,
And it's shown, they're proving that it's the mental health sides of things. And when we get that assistance and get that insight, that we start to find our grounding and we start to
yes,
find our hearts, and that helps us along that path.
exactly,
So
exactly.
it's, to me, there's that self-care and wellness, and to me, they're different things. And the horses are that path to wellness.
They're about making you feel good
Yeah,
and making
absolutely.
you feel.
Exactly, making you feel again and giving you the tools to use. I know with
Exactly.
when the work, we both work in the same field, and it's
Yes,
we have the tools. You walk away with the tools.
exactly.
It can be that breath work, be it stopping for a minute and looking within. It's they're the tools we can take back to our job.
They are.
Yeah.
And one of the things the horses have told a lot of adults that I've worked with is sometimes you need time to play. And sometimes we don't do our own release of letting go. We looked at our children, their stress level goes down if you tell them to run around the house or go out and play with your friends. Well, we need to do those things too.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes.
And play is that's so interesting because we don't. I used to ask my guests, and I haven't done it recently, is to always, what was a touchstone from childhood? And it was interesting to hear people go, oh, well, I would dance, I would daydream, I would do, and then I was told
Yes.
not to do them. And later in
No.
life, they're like, oh, but daydreaming. I remember one person talked about daydreaming, and they would always daydream as a child and into their imagination. And then they go to school, and it was like, oh, don't do that, don't do that. So later on in life, it was that coming back to that.
Well, and it's funny you said that because my one sister and myself, we would dance around the house and sing. We thought we were rock stars. And when I was in therapy, he's like, sometimes music helps. And I went, it's funny you say that. I used to do that. And I have been running around the house
Nice,
dancing to music while my daughter is at work, and I'm a rock star again.
nice.
Yeah,
Yeah, we have to remember to play.
we do.
And that
We
is
do.
a big thing I see with the horses, of people like, well, what do I do? Whatever you want to do.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm gonna skip. Like, I haven't skipped in years, and things like that. So it's yeah, it's that.
exactly.
Well, and that's that joy. I
It
think we
is.
lose the joy sometimes, especially when it's like our stress levels do this and our joy level does this.
Exactly.
How can we bring them sort of this? So yeah, we can have the stress, but the joy counters that. It's like the kindness at the beginning we talked about. There's
Exactly.
those acts of kindness that have to be more than the acts of not kindness. And so how can we make joy more than stress?
Yes. And the acts of kindness to ourselves once in a while.
Exactly.
Yes.
Oh, such rich conversation. I love this. I love this. And you are going to write a book on this, are you not?
It's so funny you said that because that was one of the things my therapist had said to me. And I had just quoted that today. He said, I think you need to write a book. And I said, yeah, I'm going to call it Surviving 911. Hence the reason I gave you this title.
So we will look for that.
Yes.
That's awesome. That's awesome. It's so important. I think as a starting out author myself, it's so important to put things into, it's a journey to put things into words and onto paper.
It
Like,
is.
and there's the journaling part of it, but then to actually articulate it into something people can understand, as opposed to journals,
Yes,
which are like, I can't even
exactly.
read my own writing. So to it's an evolution for ourselves to
Yes.
put words on paper,
Yes.
and then the courage to actually share it,
Yes.
and then to let it go, then to pop it, like,
Love it.
yeah, like I'm almost
Yeah.
at the point where I'm ready to pop another one. That sounds,
There you
but
go.
it's yeah, it's sort of like sending them out into the world and going, okay, here you are, world. Whoever
What do you
needs to
think?
hear this, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and then you let it go and you move on. So
Yes.
that's wonderful that you are, and I think it will help so many people. So
Thank you.
any last words of wisdom or things that we missed that you want to throw into the pot?
I just want to wish every telecommunications officer out there a great week. And you know what? Everybody in the emergency service field needs to give themselves a pat on the back once in a while. And anybody watching this or listening, who doesn't work in that field, give them kudos when you see them because it goes a long way to making us feel great.
Awesome, thank you. We will be sure to do that. But don't honk at them when they're behind, when you're behind them.
No, no, no,
Don't
no,
do
no.
that. Don't do that. Thank you, Joan Marie. Thank you so much for agreeing to be here today and for sharing you and your journey with us, your journey through and your journey where you are now.
Well, thank you.
So much wisdom to share. And I will put some links and to things we've talked about in a summary. This will go on to YouTube, and it'll go on to Apple and Spotify and all those fun places, so we can listen while we're doing chores at the barn or driving to work. And with that, I'm going to close our virtual circle for today and for this episode. Thank you for those that are listening and those that are here. Thank you for sharing the space with us. And as always, ask that you share this episode forward. We never know who needs to hear the words that were spoken here. And I hear time and time again, people say, I didn't know I needed to hear that, but I did. So being in the sort of the right place at the right time. So please, if you can, share it forward. And it takes courage for us to share our stories, but when we do share our stories, it just really might be that very thing somebody else needs to sort of have hope in their life and see a brighter tomorrow. So sharing stories is what makes the world go around. And with that, I thank you all for being here and for listening. Have a good night.